The mean woman looked at my wife in her wheelchair and said, "You should stay home. You're blocking everyone." My wife started crying. This woman had no idea that her husband was a Navy SEAL. She was about to learn what happens when you hurt the person I love most. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Sarah Matthews had always been the strongest person I knew. Even now, as she maneuvered her wheelchair through the narrow aisles of Greenfield's only grocery store, her emerald eyes held the same fierce determination that had captured my heart 8 years ago. I watched from the produce section as she reached for a box of cereal on the top shelf. My instincts screamed to help her, but I had learned to respect her independence. Sarah hated being treated like she was fragile, even though my heart broke every time I remembered that terrible night 2 years ago. The stairs. Those damn stairs in our old apartment building. The landlord had promised to fix the loose railing for months. Sarah was coming home from her job at the children's hospital, her arms full of files she'd brought home to finish patient reports. She was always working late, always caring for others before herself. The railing gave way on the third step from the top. I was deployed in Afghanistan when I got the call. My commanding officer had to physically restrain me from going AWOL. Sarah spent 3 months in the hospital, 2 surgeries, and countless hours in physical therapy. The doctors said she'd never walk again. But Sarah? She called it her new adventure. She made jokes about having the best parking spots now. She never complained, never asked, "Why me?" She just adapted and moved forward with the same grace she'd shown our entire marriage. I was selecting oranges when I heard the voice that made my blood run cold. "Excuse me, but you can't block the aisle like that." I turned to see a woman in her 50s, perfectly coiffed blonde hair, designer clothes, and an expression like she'd just stepped in something unpleasant. She was standing behind Sarah, tapping her foot impatiently. "I'm sorry?" Sarah's voice was polite but confused. "I'm just trying to reach the cereal." "Well, you're taking forever and normal people need to shop too. Maybe you should ask someone for help instead of holding up the entire store." Normal people. The words hit me like a physical blow. I started moving toward them, my hands clenching into fists. "I understand you're in a hurry," Sarah said, her voice still calm. "I'll just be another moment. Look, I don't mean to be rude, but maybe you should consider online shopping. It would be easier for everyone." The woman's name tag read, Patricia Morrison, HOA board member. Of course. I'd dealt with her type before, small-minded people who thought their minor authority gave them the right to treat others like dirt. Sarah's cheeks flushed red, and I could see her hands trembling slightly as she gripped her wheelchair. This was the woman who had comforted crying children in the hospital, who had never let her disability stop her from living fully, and this Karen was making her feel ashamed for simply existing in public. "Ma'am," Sarah said, and I could hear the slight waver in her voice, "I'm moving as fast as I can. I don't think I'm blocking." "Of course you're blocking it. Do you see how narrow these aisles are? That chair takes up half the space. And now you're making me late for my HOA meeting because you insist on doing things you clearly can't handle." That was it. I dropped the oranges and started walking toward them, but Patricia wasn't done. "Honestly, I don't understand why people like you don't just stay home. There are services for this sort of thing. You don't have to make it everyone else's problem." Sarah's shoulders slumped. For the first time since her accident, I saw her spirit crack. This woman had accomplished what Taliban fighters, IEDs, and 2 years of physical therapy couldn't do. She'd made my wife feel small. "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered, backing her wheelchair away from the shelf. "I'll move." Finally, Patricia huffed. Some people have no consideration. I stepped into view then, and Patricia's eyes widened as she took in my 6'3" frame. I'd been out of the Navy for 6 months, but I still carried myself like a soldier. My beard was neatly trimmed, my clothes simple but clean, and my wedding ring caught the fluorescent light as I crossed my arms. "Is there a problem here?" I asked, my voice deadly calm. Patricia's demeanor shifted instantly. She looked me up and down, probably trying to figure out if I was someone she needed to worry about. "Oh, no problem at all. I was just explaining to your friend that the aisles are quite narrow for wheelchairs." "My wife," I corrected, emphasizing the word. "And she has every right to shop here." "Well, of course she does. I never said she didn't. I was just suggesting that online shopping might be more convenient for someone in her condition." Sarah rolled her wheelchair closer to me, and I could see the hurt in her eyes. "Marcus, let's just go. I don't want to cause any trouble." "You're not causing trouble, sweetheart." I kept my eyes on Patricia. Some people just need to be reminded about basic human decency. Patricia's face reddened. "Excuse me?" I was being perfectly reasonable. If you can't handle a simple suggestion. Here's a suggestion for you, I interrupted. Maybe mind your own business and let people shop in peace. Do you know who I am? Patricia's voice rose. I'm on the HOA board for Greenfield Heights. I don't have to stand here and be insulted by some what? I stepped closer and Patricia took a step back. Some husband defending his wife. Look, I don't want any trouble, Patricia said, but her voice was stronger now, more defiant. I was just trying to help. Maybe if you people were more grateful instead of looking for offense everywhere. You people? Sarah's voice was sharp now, her own anger finally showing. What exactly do you mean by that? I mean people who expect the world to accommodate them instead of taking responsibility for their own situations. I felt something cold and dangerous settle in my chest. This wasn't just ignorance anymore. This was cruelty. You want to talk about responsibility? I said, my voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Let me tell you about responsibility. My wife worked 60-hour weeks as a pediatric nurse. She saved children's lives. She fell downstairs because a landlord was too cheap to fix a broken railing. She spent 3 months learning to live in a wheelchair, and not once did she complain or ask for pity. Patricia's face was pale now, but she wasn't backing down. That's very sad, but it doesn't give her the right to. The right to what? To buy groceries? To exist in public? To live her life? To hold up everyone else because she can't handle simple tasks. Sarah made a soft sound, almost like a sob, and I felt my last thread of patience snap. Simple tasks. I repeated. You think grocery shopping is simple for someone who has to reach everything from a wheelchair? You think navigating narrow aisles designed for walking people is simple? You think dealing with ignorant, heartless people like you is simple? I don't have to listen to this, Patricia said, pulling out her phone. I'm calling the police. You're being threatening. Threatening? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Lady, you have no idea what threatening looks like. But you're about to find out what consequences look like. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled out my own phone and started recording. It means I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you are. Patricia Morrison, HOA board member, harassing disabled people at the grocery store. You can't do that. That's harassment. No, what you did to my wife was harassment. This is just documentation. Patricia lunged for my phone, but I held it high above her reach. Delete that right now. I don't think so. By now, other shoppers had gathered around us. I could see phones coming out, people whispering to each other. Patricia looked around frantically, realizing she was surrounded by witnesses. This is ridiculous, she said, trying to regain her composure. I was simply trying to help. Help? An elderly woman from the crowd spoke up. I saw the whole thing. You were being cruel to that poor girl. That poor girl is my wife, I said, and she's not poor anything. She's stronger than all of us combined. Sarah reached for my hand and I could feel her trembling. Marcus, please. Let's just go. No, I said firmly. This needs to be said. Patricia, you want to know what real strength looks like? It's not pushing around people you think are weaker than you. It's getting up every morning and facing a world that's not built for you. It's fighting for your independence when everyone wants to help you, and it's keeping your dignity when people like you try to take it away. Patricia's face was twisted with rage and embarrassment. You don't scare me with your tough guy act. I've dealt with your type before. My type. I smiled and several people in the crowd stepped back. Sarah knew that smile. It was the same one I'd worn when I told her about my last mission, the one that had earned me my final medal and my ticket home. Let me tell you about my type, Patricia. My type spent 12 years in the Navy SEALs. My type has been in situations where one wrong move means good people die. My type has looked real evil in the face and sent it straight to hell. Patricia's confidence wavered. That doesn't give you the right to. I'm not done talking. My voice cut through hers like a blade. My type has carried wounded brothers through enemy fire. My type has made split-second decisions that saved lives. My type has earned every scar and every medal defending the freedom of people like you to be ignorant and cruel. The crowd was completely silent now. Even the store employees had stopped what they were doing to listen. But you know what the hardest mission of my life was, Patricia? It wasn't infiltrating Taliban strongholds. It wasn't defusing IEDs. It wasn't surviving firefights in the mountains of Afghanistan. It was sitting in a hospital waiting room, not knowing if my wife would walk again, and being completely helpless to fix it. Sarah squeezed my hand tighter. I could see tears in her eyes. I faced down terrorists, survived explosions and led men into battle. But watching my wife struggle with a jar of pickles because her angle is wrong from the wheelchair? That breaks me every single day. Not because she's weak, because she's so damn strong that she won't let me help her. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. So when you tell my wife she should stay home, when you make her feel like she's a burden, when you treat her like she's less than human, that's when you meet the part of me that I thought I'd left in the desert. That's when you find out what happens when someone threatens the person I'd die for. A young woman in the crowd started clapping. Then another person joined in. Within seconds, the entire group was applauding, and Patricia looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. That's enough. Patricia shouted. This is harassment. I'm calling the police. Please do, I said calmly. I'm sure they'd love to see the video of you harassing a disabled woman. I wasn't harassing anyone. I was trying to help. Help? Sarah spoke up for the first time in several minutes. Her voice was strong again, filled with the fire I'd fallen in love with. You told me I should stay home. You called me a burden. You made me feel ashamed for existing. That's not help, that's cruelty. Patricia's face crumpled. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. Sarah rolled her wheelchair closer to Patricia. You meant every word. You looked at me and saw someone you thought was weak, someone you could push around. You saw my wheelchair and decided I was less than you. That's not true. Then why didn't you offer to help me reach the cereal instead of telling me I shouldn't be there? Patricia had no answer for that. I'll tell you why, Sarah continued. Because helping would have required you to see me as a person. It would have required basic human kindness. And you don't have that. The crowd murmured agreement. Several people were still recording and I could see Patricia's panic growing. I want to tell you something, Patricia, Sarah said. I've been dealing with people like you for 2 years now. People who think my wheelchair makes me less than human. People who talk down to me, who assume I'm stupid, who treat me like I'm a burden. Patricia looked around desperately, but there was no escape. But you know what I've learned? The wheelchair doesn't make me weak. It makes me stronger. Every day I get up and face a world that wasn't built for me. Every day I prove that I belong here just as much as anyone else. And people like you? You're the ones with the real disability. What do you mean? Patricia whispered. You're disabled by your own ignorance. You're crippled by your lack of empathy. You're paralyzed by your fear of anything different from you. And unlike my condition, yours is completely curable. You just have to choose to be better. The silence stretched for a long moment before Patricia finally spoke. I was having a bad day. My husband, he's been sick and I've been stressed and I didn't mean to take it out on you. Everyone has bad days, I said. That's not an excuse for cruelty. I know. You're right. I'm sorry. Sarah studied Patricia's face for a long moment. What's wrong with your husband? Patricia looked surprised by the question. He had a stroke 6 months ago. He's in a wheelchair now and he hates it. He hates me for seeing him like that. He barely speaks to me anymore. The crowd began to disperse, sensing that the confrontation was winding down. But Sarah wasn't done. How do you treat him? Sarah asked quietly. What do you mean? When he's struggling to reach something, or when he's frustrated with his chair, or when he's having a bad day, how do you treat him? Patricia's eyes filled with tears. I try to help. I try to make things easier for him. But he pushes me away. He says I'm treating him like an invalid. And how does that make you feel? Helpless. Angry. Like I can't do anything right. Sarah nodded slowly. That's how I felt when I first got hurt. Angry at the world, angry at myself, angry at Marcus for trying to help. It took me a long time to realize that accepting help isn't weakness, it's just being human. Patricia wiped her eyes. But he won't let me help him. Because he's afraid, Sarah said gently. He's afraid that if he accepts help, he'll lose what's left of his independence. He's afraid that if he admits he needs you, you'll see him as less than he was. That's ridiculous. He's still the same man I married. Then tell him that. Every day. Show him that you don't see him as broken. Show him that you see him as the man you love, just with new challenges. Patricia looked at Sarah with something like wonder. How do you do it? How do you stay so positive? Sarah smiled, and it was the smile that had first made me fall in love with her. I have help. I have someone who reminds me every day that I'm not defined by my wheelchair. Someone who sees me as whole, not broken. Someone who loves me exactly as I am. She looked at me and I felt my heart swell with pride and love. But mostly, Sarah continued, I stay positive because I choose to. Every morning I have a choice. I can focus on what I've lost or I can focus on what I still have. I can let people like you make me feel small, or I can know my own worth. Patricia was crying openly now. I've been so angry. At him, at the situation, at everything. I took it out on you because seeing you made me think about him and I couldn't handle it. Anger is normal, Sarah said. I was angry too. But anger without action is just poison. You have to choose what to do with it. I don't know how to help him. Start by not treating other people the way you treated me today. Your husband will see that, and he'll know that you don't see disability as something shameful. Patricia nodded slowly. I owe you an apology. Both of you. What I said was inexcusable. Apology accepted, Sarah said immediately. But I want you to do something for me. Anything. I want you to go home and tell your husband what happened today. Tell him about meeting a woman in a wheelchair who didn't let it stop her from living her life. Tell him about her husband who loves her exactly as she is. Patricia smiled through her tears. I will. I promise I will. And next time you see someone struggling, offer to help. Don't assume they can't do it themselves, but let them know they're not alone. I will. Thank you. Both of you. As Patricia walked away, I put my arm around Sarah's shoulders. You never cease to amaze me, I said quietly. She was hurt, Sarah said simply. Hurt people. But they can also heal people if you give them the chance. Most people would have just accepted her apology and moved on. You turned it into a teaching moment. Sarah laughed. You forget, I'm a nurse. I've been teaching people about healing my whole life. We finished our shopping in peaceful silence, but I could see the wheels turning in Sarah's mind. As we loaded groceries into the car, she finally spoke. Marcus, I need to tell you something. What is it? I've been thinking about going back to work. I stopped loading bags. Sarah, you don't have to. I want to. I've been sitting at home feeling sorry for myself for 2 years. Today reminded me that I have something to offer. There are people out there who need to know they're not alone. What are you thinking? I want to work with recently injured patients. People who are dealing with new disabilities. I want to show them that life doesn't end because your body changes. I felt a surge of pride so strong it nearly knocked me over. You'd be incredible at that. I'm scared, she admitted. What if I can't do it? What if I'm not strong enough? I knelt down next to her wheelchair and took her hands. Sarah, you are the strongest person I know. You've survived war zones and disability. You've faced down ignorance and cruelty. You've kept your heart open when it would have been easier to close it. If you can do all that, you can do anything. Will you help me? Sweetheart, I'd follow you into hell if you asked me to. A career change is nothing. She laughed and kissed me. I love you, Marcus Mitchell. I love you too, Sarah Mitchell. More than you'll ever know. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was making coffee while Sarah got ready for work. She'd been hired as a patient advocate at the Regional Rehabilitation Center, and she loved every minute of it. Mr. Mitchell? This is Patricia Morrison. I almost dropped the phone. Patricia? Yes, I hope it's okay that I'm calling. I got your number from the hospital. Sarah gave me her card when we met again last month. Sarah had mentioned running into Patricia at the store again, but she'd been vague about the details. What can I do for you, Patricia? I wanted to thank you. Both of you. What happened that day in the store, it changed everything for me and my husband. How so? I went home and told him about meeting Sarah. About how she didn't let her wheelchair define her. About how you looked at her like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. I smiled. She is. It took some time, but Robert started to open up. He started letting me help him sometimes. He started leaving the house again. Last month he even went back to work part-time. That's wonderful, Patricia. But that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling because Sarah inspired me to do something. I've started a support group for families dealing with sudden disability. We meet every week and we share our stories, our struggles, our victories. That sounds like an amazing program. It is. And I was wondering, would you and Sarah consider speaking to our group? I think your story would help so many people. I looked at Sarah, who was listening from the kitchen doorway. She nodded enthusiastically. We'd be honored, I said. Thank you. Both of you. You saved my marriage. You saved my husband's life. And you taught me that sometimes the strongest people are the ones who look the most vulnerable. The community center was packed. Patricia had warned us that word had spread about the support group, but I wasn't prepared for the crowd that showed up. There were people in wheelchairs, people with prosthetics, people with invisible disabilities, and dozens of family members and friends. Sarah wheeled herself to the front of the room, and I stood beside her. She looked beautiful, confident, radiant, whole. 2 years ago, Sarah began, I fell down a flight of stairs. In one moment my entire life changed. I went from being a person who happened to be married to a Navy SEAL to being a disabled woman who happened to be married to a Navy SEAL. The room was silent. The difference in those two descriptions is everything. In the first, I was defined by my life, my choices, my actions. In the second, I was defined by my limitations. Sarah paused and looked around the room. But here's what I learned. I get to choose which description is true. We all do. Every single day we get to choose whether we're defined by our disabilities or by our lives. A woman in the front row raised her hand. But it's not that simple. People look at us differently. They treat us differently. You're absolutely right, Sarah said. They do. And that's on them. But how we respond to that treatment, that's on us. Sarah told the story of that day in the grocery store, of Patricia's cruelty and eventual transformation. She talked about the choice to educate instead of retaliate, to heal instead of hurt. The truth is, Sarah said, we can't control how other people see us. But we can control how we see ourselves. And when we see ourselves as whole, complete, valuable people, others start to see us that way too. When it was my turn to speak, I looked out at the crowd and saw faces filled with pain, hope, fear, and determination. I've been a warrior my entire adult life, I said. I've fought battles on foreign soil and domestic ground. I've faced enemies with weapons and enemies with words. But the greatest battle I've ever witnessed was watching my wife fight to reclaim her life after her accident. I turned to look at Sarah and she smiled at me. She taught me that true strength isn't about physical power or military training. It's about getting up every morning and choosing to engage with a world that isn't built for you. It's about maintaining your dignity when others try to take it away. It's about finding ways to help others even when you're struggling yourself. An older man in the back raised his hand. What about the anger? I'm so angry all the time. Anger is fuel, I said. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to let it consume you or are you going to use it to build something better? Sarah wheeled forward. I was angry too. I was angry at God, at the landlord, at the world. I was angry at Marcus for being able to walk when I couldn't. I was angry at myself for needing help. How did you get past it? I realized that my anger was just grief in disguise. I was mourning the life I thought I was going to have. And that's okay. Grief is normal. But at some point, you have to decide whether you're going to live in the past or build a future. What if the future looks different than you planned? Sarah smiled. Then you make new plans. Better plans. Plans that include everything you've learned about yourself and the world. After the meeting, people lingered to talk. Stories were shared, phone numbers exchanged, connections made. I watched Sarah in her element, counseling a young man who'd lost his leg in a motorcycle accident, comforting a woman whose husband had suffered a traumatic brain injury. Patricia approached me as I was helping stack chairs. Marcus, I wanted to tell you something. What's that? That day in the store when you stood up for Sarah, when you told me about your service, about your love for her, it wasn't just about defending her. It was about showing me what real strength looks like. I don't understand. You could have destroyed me. You had the power, the training, the righteous anger. But you chose to educate instead. You chose to turn a moment of cruelty into a lesson about love. That's real strength. I looked at Sarah, who was still talking with the young man, and felt my heart swell with pride. Sarah taught me that, I said. She taught me that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is show mercy. You're both remarkable. No, I said, shaking my head. We're just people who chose to see challenges as opportunities. We're just people who decided that our story wasn't going to be defined by what happened to us, but by how we responded to what happened to us. Patricia nodded. Robert wants to meet you both. He's been talking about volunteering here, maybe sharing his story. We'd love to meet him. He's nervous. He's still struggling with accepting his new reality. That's normal. Recovery isn't linear. Some days are better than others. How do you handle the bad days? I thought about that for a moment. We handle them together. We remind each other that bad days don't mean bad lives. We focus on what we can control and let go of what we can't. Chapter 12, The True Victory. On the drive home, Sarah was quiet. I could tell she was processing everything that had happened. What are you thinking about? I asked. That day in the store. Patricia. All of it. What about it? I used to think that my accident was the worst thing that ever happened to me. And now I think it might have been one of the best. I pulled the car over and turned to look at her. What do you mean? I mean that before my accident, I was just living my life. I was a good nurse, a good wife, a good person. But I wasn't really making a difference. I wasn't touching lives the way I am now. Sarah, you saved children's lives. You made a difference every day. I treated symptoms. Now I treat souls. I help people find their strength, their purpose, their hope. I help them see that they're not broken, just different. I reached over and took her hand. You've always done that. You did it for me when I came back from deployment with PTSD. You did it for Patricia when she was cruel to you. You did it for everyone in that room tonight. But I understand now in a way I never did before. I understand what it feels like to lose everything you thought you were and have to rebuild from scratch. I understand what it feels like to be seen as less than human. I understand what it feels like to fight for your dignity every single day. And that makes you a better advocate. It makes me a better person. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Marcus. Yeah. Do you ever regret it? Leaving the Navy? Giving up your career to take care of me? I turned to face her fully. Sarah, I didn't give up my career. I found my calling. Taking care of you, supporting you, being your partner in this new life. That's not a sacrifice. That's a privilege. But you loved being a SEAL. I loved serving my country. But I love serving you more. I love being the person you can count on. I love being part of your strength. She smiled and I saw tears in her eyes. I love you, Marcus Mitchell. I love you too, Sarah Mitchell. More today than yesterday, less than tomorrow. The phone rang at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning. I answered it groggily, expecting some kind of emergency. Mr. Mitchell? This is Amanda Torres from Channel 7 News. I'm calling about your wife's nomination for the Community Hero Award. I sat up in bed. What nomination? She's been nominated for her work with the Disability Advocacy Program. The ceremony is next Friday. We'd like to do a feature story about her work. Sarah was already awake, listening to my side of the conversation. I'll have to ask her, I said, looking at Sarah. She nodded enthusiastically. We'd be honored, I said into the phone. After I hung up, Sarah threw her arms around me. Can you believe it? I can absolutely believe it. You've changed hundreds of lives in the past year. We've changed hundreds of lives. This is your moment, Sarah. You earned this. The ceremony was held at the city's convention center. Sarah wore a beautiful blue dress that matched her eyes, and I wore my dress uniform, the first time I'd put it on since my retirement. When they called Sarah's name, the entire auditorium erupted in applause. I watched her wheel herself onto the stage with the same grace and determination she'd shown that day in the grocery store. A year ago, Sarah said into the microphone, I thought my life was over. I thought that because my body had changed, I was no longer valuable. I was wrong. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. I've learned that we're all just one moment away from having our lives completely changed. A car accident, a medical diagnosis, a fall down the stairs, any of us could wake up tomorrow facing a new reality. But I've also learned that our value doesn't come from our physical abilities. It comes from our capacity to love, to serve, to inspire, to heal. It comes from our willingness to see challenges as opportunities and setbacks as setups for comebacks. Sarah looked out at the crowd and I could see her scanning the faces until she found mine. 2 years ago I fell down some stairs. But I didn't fall alone. I fell into the arms of a community that lifted me up. I fell into the embrace of a husband who reminded me daily that I was whole. I fell into a purpose that I never would have found any other way. The applause was thunderous. As Sarah accepted her award, I thought about that day in the grocery store, about Patricia's cruelty and eventual transformation, about the support group that had grown from 12 people to over 200. But mostly I thought about the woman on that stage, my wife, my hero, my heart. The woman who had turned her greatest tragedy into her greatest triumph. The woman who had shown me that real strength isn't about what you can lift or how hard you can fight. Real strength is about how you choose to fall and, more importantly, how you choose to rise. As we drove home that night, Sarah's award gleaming in the back seat, she turned to me and smiled. So what's next, warrior? I reached over and took her hand. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Together, she agreed. And I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd meet them the same way we'd met everything else, with love, with courage, and with the unshakable knowledge that we were stronger together than either of us could ever be alone. The grocery store incident had been just the beginning. It had been the moment when we stopped letting life happen to us and started making life happen for us. It had been the moment when we realized that our story wasn't about a Navy SEAL and his disabled wife. It was about two people who chose love over fear, hope over despair, and service over self-pity. It was about finding strength in the most unexpected places and learning that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to be broken. And it was about understanding that every ending is just a new beginning in disguise. The strongest people are not those who show strength in front of us, but those who win battles we know nothing about. Unknown.